we took notice that the sixth biggest city in the state was having a hotly contested mayor's race as well as city council races going on. And we wanted to make sure that we let the folks of Hoover have the most information possible to make a solid decision coming up on Tuesday, August the 23rd. Toward that end, we welcome to the show Frank Brocato, who is running for mayor of Hoover. And Frank, for whatever reason, I try to mispronounce your name, but I think I'm getting it correct. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning to you. Thank you very much for having me.
Am I getting that right, Brocato?
Brocato. I know exactly who you're talking about.
You just want people to mark your name.
That's
on,
right. I'll be first on the ballot, and it'll work Brocato or Brocato.
I tell you, I drive through Hoover to get to work. I live in Helena, and so sometimes we go Shades Crest. Sometimes I go in different routes, but I'm always going through a portion of Hoover, and just an incredible amount of yard signs. I know this is not scientific, but you have to feel good about the people that support you to the point that they're willing to show that sport in the front yard. I mean, that's got to make you feel good.
It's very encouraging to me. You know, I think that we simply put, we have a grassroots movement going on. We started 18 months ago. This wasn't just a sudden decision that we made, and we're just building support. You know, the things that we've done, we visited 3,150 homes, and a lot of those were my own visits as well, and my wife as well. I've called people personally. We've made about 2,000 phone calls, and they're not robocalls. They're calls. I call you and ask you for your support, but at the end, I ask you if you have any questions for me. I can't tell you how many times people ask me questions and want to know about the community. So, yes, it's very encouraging, and I appreciate all the support that I'm receiving.
And this is not unique to Hoover. It just is the case. I mean, folks have busy lives. They've been taking summer vacation. They're getting back into the routine, and oftentimes they only start fairly late in the process in trying to invest themselves in the knowledge to figure out who they're going to vote for. Toward that end, just tell folks about you, your background, where you come from, how long you've been in Hoover, and just your story.
Of course, I grew up in Birmingham, was raised on the south side of Birmingham, and then my wife and I moved to Hoover in 1973, where I actually joined the Hoover Volunteer Fire Department.
Boy, it was a big city back then, wasn't it?
It was a big city of probably 1,500 maybe. Green Valley Drug was the hot spot in town, actually, and it still is, as a matter of fact. But, I spent the next 42 years in Hoover. We raised our family there. We've been there 40 years, actually, as a family. We made one little move. Raised my children there. Two of my three children have decided to settle back in Hoover as well. And I've got 6 grandchildren that will be going through the Hoover school system. 2 of them actually started first grade today, so pretty exciting for them. But, I was in a really unique position because I was in a very small town at that time when we grew into the 6th largest city in the state with nearly 90,000 people. We have a $147 million budget and about 700 employees. But, Matt, I didn't just observe along the way as the city grew. I took advantage of the opportunities that were afforded to me through promotion and things like that. And so, when I was coming up, we didn't have things like a human resources department. We didn't have information technology, E911. We didn't really even have a true emergency medical services program. We didn't have things like the Regions Park or the great golf tournament that we had, and the SEC tournament, just all of these things that you've seen out there. And I was able to be a part of that, which gave me an incredible amount of knowledge about how our city works. So I've worked with 7 different mayors, every department head that was ever in Hoover. And not only did I work with them, but I've been in the trenches with them. I've been down turning the knobs. I understand how our city works. And you combine that with the fact that I've managed hundreds of people. I've managed them in the heat of fire, literally.
I mean, and for those that don't know, I should know you're a firefighter by trade.
I as I said, joined the volunteer fire department. I retired as the chief of operations and the fire marshal. But during that 42 years there, I had a number of jobs. Principally, I was the chief of emergency medical services for about 20 or 25 years. And we made some incredible moves forward in emergency medical services. And I'm really pleased to say that we were able to put a team together that really changed the way EMS was delivered in Hoover in 1994. It really made a difference in the way people are treated, our treatment approach, and our transportation of patients. And it was such a great move. It saved lives, basically.
People typically forget about the rescue part of fire and rescue. I mean, clearly, when you think of firefighting, you think of the possibility of fire, probably less frequent than the rescue side of things, on the firefighter side of things. I know that, is it not the case that if you get a firefighter response to an emergency call, one of those firefighters is going to be a trained EMT on that call? Is that not correct?
Well, we made Chief Bradley, who was our fire chief for many, many years, made the decision to hire only paramedics. So for most of my career, to even get on Hoover Fire Departments, you had to be a paramedic, which is pretty unusual. So you had more than one. Most of the time, the entire crew would be made up of paramedics.
I got you. Well, talk to me about the city. I mean, because, I've been talking about this for a while, and we talked to one of your competitors that's going to be running on the ballot. We've not had a chance to speak to the incumbent, although we have an invitation out to him. We talked to a number of other concerned citizens. Ken King came on as part of the Homeowners Association. And I've asked this question of everybody.
Sure.
Hoover seems to be rocking and rolling. I mean, it seems that Hoover is just moving merrily along and everything is going swimmingly. But based on some commercials of yours that I've heard and based on just interviews I've heard of yours, underneath the surface, you think there's some danger brewing, right?
Well, I think we're resting on our laurels. We have an incredible city. You look at our city services, they're top notch. You look at our schools, they're top notch. Everything we do very well. But we've really been on cruise control. If you look at, there are two really major issues about services in our city that we need to address, and it's abundantly clear that the superintendent of education is saying we have a wonderful school system, but she's throwing up a flag, so we have a deficit spending going on that we just can't continue to tolerate. And I've talked to teachers, I've held meetings with them, I've met one-on-one with parents, I've met with the superintendent, and they continue to become concerned about programs being cut, teachers being lost. And, we've got such a great school system. You think about Hoover, you think about our football team, and both of our high schools are like competing for state championships. But, we do other great things in our schools. Hoover was identified as one of the best communities school systems for music education. Spain Park and Hoover High School rated the top 2 safest high schools in Alabama. Now, you think about that. That's pretty good. We're one of the top school systems in the state of Alabama. Just a lot of things to hang our hat on. But every year, we're at budget time, we have a deficit. We can't continue to do that. And the concerns that I was telling you about when I met with teachers is that we're losing top quality teachers, we're losing programs, and the classroom sizes are going up, and that concerns them.
All right, so I've been doing this a while, Frank, and when we talk about budget deficits, there are several go-to ways to solve those. Mm-hmm. One way would be to raise revenue, that'd be tax-based. Another way would be to reprioritize and spend more wisely. Another way would be to move spending from one arena and get it to another arena. Walk me through your plan to get this budget deficit in order.
Well, Dr. Murphy, all of the things that you just said, she's probably said those very things, but the main thing she's doing, she's getting her house in order. And I think at some point, she's already said we know that we're going to have a shortfall. We don't know exactly what that number is going to be, but I think we're going to be pretty close to reaching that number after she's been here a year or so. And she's got about a year and a little bit under her belt now. So we know that there's going to be a shortfall. The city of Hoover is giving less than 2% of our city budget, about $2 million, to the schools each year. We can do better than that. Now, I've said all along, I'm not for taking a big pot of gold and just dumping it over into the school system. But what I am in favor of doing is looking across the board and looking at ways that both of us can save. I don't look at Hoover Schools and the city of Hoover as two separate entities. I understand they are on the books. But, you know, when that school bus rides down the street, it says City of Hoover on it. I look at us as all in the same boat, going in the same direction. So let's see how we can support one another to save money. And I think those things really have not been looked at across the board. I mean, the city and the school. For instance, there are things that we do at the city. Just to be simple, we cut grass, they cut grass. We work on fire trucks and cars and tractors, and they work on not fire trucks, but buses and tractors and cars. You know, are there some ways that we can share some of this and reduce the cost? Excuse me. They have a medical program there with nurses, and it probably budgets $400,000 a year for that. We have a huge emergency medical services budget. So are there some savings there? I don't know if it would be $5,000 or $50,000, but let's look at things like that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not in favor of just dumping money, but we certainly can improve our contributions to the
Roughly
to the
speaking, what type of budgetary shortfalls within the school system are we talking right now?
Well, they've been running anywhere from $1 million to $10 million for the last 7 years.
And they just make that up because they have they've had a surplus?
They're operating out of their surplus. And, you know, I'm not ashamed that they've got a nice surplus. They have 17 schools. That means they have 17 large buildings that are going to need capital expenditures along the way. So, you know, I want them to have a nice, healthy reserve. They need to, in the future, build schools. And we want to make sure that we have teachers that we don't just pay what the state of Alabama requires. We want to pay more than that. And we do the same thing for our police and firefighters. So why wouldn't we want to do it for our teachers as well?
Frank Brocato, our guest, will continue the conversation in just a moment. Frank Brocato, he is running for mayor of Hoover, and I'm getting to your calls momentarily. And when I do, you'll have to slip those headphones on, but not yet, Frank. I want to ask you this. So you were a firefighter all of your career, and you've retired recently. And it's my understanding the firefighters union has stepped out and endorsed the incumbent, Gary Ivey. One would think that they would naturally be attracted to you. What's the story there?
Well, the story is that I was a chief officer most of my career at Hoover Fire Department. I was the number 2 in the fire department. So it's a labor management issue. I was never in the union, never really supported the union. And essentially, I was always across the table from the union on the opposite side. And one of the things that has concerned me is that it was written up as that they didn't support one of their own. Well, I'm really not. Yes, I am a firefighter, and the rank and file firefighters would consider me one of their own, but the union leadership certainly wouldn't. Now, the other misconception out there is that there was some sort of ballot that went out that said, do you vote for Frank Brocato or Gary Ivey? There was never any such ballot as that. As a matter of fact, I went to the union and told them that I did not want their support or their PAC money. I didn't feel like the fire department should be involved in politics when I was on the fire department, and I certainly didn't change my mind just because I was running for mayor. So it seems to me that the citizens of Hoover pay us very, very well, and that I've read a lot of job descriptions on fire department on the firefighters, and it can be narrowed down to fighting fire and saving lives. I've never seen where it said try to pick the mayor for a city.
Only about 3.5 minutes left, so I want to kind of go a little rapid fire. One of the things that you seem to have made it is something of a central tenet of your campaign is the fact that you have retired from your working life, and that this would be a full-time job, and you feel like it merits full-time focus, and you don't believe that Gary is giving appropriate full-time focus to the task.
Well, I mean, just look at his flyers. I mean, the very first thing on the advertisements that he's sending out, he boasts that he's the president and CEO of Crest Cadillac. And basically that's where the mayor's office is. we spend $400,000 a year in a budget for a mayor. About $100,000 of that goes towards payment for a mayor. So the city council 14 years ago recognized, just through by virtue of the salary that they raised it to, that we need full-time leadership. So the problem is we haven't had a staff meeting in 7 years. We haven't had a budget hearing in 7 years. We've lost some incredibly big businesses in Hoover. I don't mean retail businesses. I mean white-collar science and technology type businesses. 1,700 Southern Company Services jobs are leaving. We lost the Mercedes dealership. We lost American Family Care. We've got to have someone that's focused on this daily, out recruiting those very types of businesses that we're losing.
Let's slip those headphones on there real quick, Frank. I want to get to a couple of questions that folks have. Steve is in Hoover. Steve, you have a question for Frank Brocato.
Yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk, and I thank you for your background in the public service, and that's top notch in Hoover. But to me, this election is really more about the school system because of, and I want to share a quick statistic with you. I went back in 2005. When the Hoover City Council and the mayor at the time pulled the funding away from the schools, and that time.
Hey, Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt. You got to be quick. I got a minute and a half left, and I want to give him a chance to answer.
Sure. The statistic is like $760 per student, and now the city funds $82. I mean, that's a huge difference, and I just really want your opinion on the school funding.
No, very good question, very good point. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I've stated from the very beginning that my intention is to work very closely with Dr. Murphy to address this. We are going to address the deficit at Hoover City Schools. That is my goal if I become mayor. That along with master planning. But our number one problem right now is taking care of the school system. You have my commitment to do that.
And you don't feel like there's very much of a master plan going on right now at all?
We never really have had a master plan. It's kind of whoever gets there first, that's what we build. And so, master planning it seems to scare some people, but master plans are dynamic. They're not static types of things. And if you look across the country now, there are things. Hoover used to be a suburb, but we're really an urban type of area now. So I think we need to start looking and thinking about what I call retrofitting suburbia, where we have walkability areas, open space. You look at the streetscapes and the design of everything from the lamp posts to the trees, and then it gives you an opportunity to build in like tech and innovation centers where you have business incubators or cluster startups, things like that. And you know what? Where's downtown Hoover? You ever seen?
Well, I was about to ask you, where's the city center?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think when you do a master plan, it gives us a great opportunity to develop a downtown Hoover.
Quickly, Frank, more information about you can be found where?
FrankBrocatoForMayor.com.
Well, there you go, FrankBrocatoForMayor.com. There's Frank Brocato. Thanks, Frank, for being on with us.
Thank you so
30
much.
good minutes of conversation.